computer. And transcription. All right, now we're ready. So good afternoon and welcome to Praxis Peace Institute's Planetary Pause series. I'm Georgia Kelly, the director of Praxis, and I am thrilled today to welcome former Congressman and presidential candidate, Dennis Kucinich. So welcome, Dennis. I want to tell people a little bit about your background before we begin. He served as a US Congressman from Ohio's 10th District for 10 terms and was a presidential candidate in the Democratic Party primaries, both in 2004 and 2008. Earlier, he was elected to the Cleveland City Council at the age of 23 and later served as mayor of Cleveland, where he managed to save the public utility from being sold off to private corporations. His new book, which I have right here and highly recommend that you get, The Division of Light and Power, is about the true story of his fight against corruption in Cleveland, where the push to privatize the public utilities threatened to become a life and death battle for the young mayor. As threats piled upon threats, Kucinich stayed the course and refused to give way to extortion. So ultimately, he saved Cleveland and its citizens over $1 billion in assets. So this book was just published June 8th, and I highly recommend that you can order it from readers if you're in Sonoma, and you can get it at your local bookstores. Dennis also spoke at Praxis Peace Institute's 7-day conference in Dubrovnik in June 2002, and I sent all of you the copy of his speech, Spirit and Stardust, last night. And he also spoke to a sold-out audience at the Marin Civic Center in March of 2003, after he announced his run for president. And Praxis produced that event, which to date, Dennis, was our largest event we've ever produced, with 1,700 people in attendance. So that was exciting. And I wanted to welcome you again, Dennis. We're really happy to have you here with us today.
Wow, Georgia, thank you. And hello to everyone on this Praxis Peace call. I certainly remember the moment and the time that we spent together in Dubrovnik, where based on the chemistry of the moment, I was able to write Spirit and Stardust, which still, when I read it, I'm always grateful that I had the chance to be there with you. I see on this call, I'm sure there are a number of people I know on the call, but when this book, in the writing of it, it's actually the 7th draft that over many years. And there's acknowledgement in the book, and I just see somebody who's on the screen, to Amy Vosbrink for her unselfish service, constant encouragement, and perseverance through proofreading one draft after another. So Amy, I saw you there, and I just wanted to give you a shout out because not only because we worked together so closely during the time that I was in Congress, but also your help in proofreading this was really important. Georgia, thank you for the invite to be here, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. This is, as I've learned, a very important time for this book to come out, and Praxis is a good place for us to talk about it.
Thank you. Well, I have a few questions, of course, to ask you about your book, which I can't wait to dive in. I just got it today. Some of the reviews I've read are glowing endorsements of this work. Norman Solomon, who's been on our program, said it reads like a novel, but it is based on a true story with meticulous devotion to facts, real political paradigms, and the human heart. But my favorite quote is from Geraldo Rivera, who says, Dennis Kucinich's tale of political violence and intrigue is a cross between The Godfather and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So this is a fabulous review or comment about the book. So I'd like you to give us some background on your battle with the attempted privatization of the public utilities in Cleveland and how that shaped your political resolve and career.
Well, the resolve that I brought into politics is actually what shaped the issue. And the book opens up where, as a newly elected, very young member of the Cleveland City Council, I'm with my wife shopping in downtown Cleveland at Christmas time. And all of a sudden, all the lights go out in downtown Cleveland and Christmas disappears. It turns out there was a massive outage on the municipal electric system. Now, that system competed door to door in a third of the city with a private utility monopoly called the Cleveland Electric Illuminating Company. When the outage occurred, I called Muni Light. The man answers the phone. Division of Light and Power. That's the title of the book. It's the name of the division that ran public power. And he explained to me that the city didn't have a backup because the private utility was stopping that kind of a safety net in case there was a problem on the system. I get into city council 2 weeks later, and as the story unfolds, it's a story of corporate espionage, of sabotage, of utility and law firms' direct interference in the workings of our public utility and in the city finances. It's a story of mob-directed assassination plots. It's about bank co-conspiracy with the utility monopoly to send the city into a fiscal default. It's about the media looking the other way and not standing up for the people and actually taking the side of this utility, which was stealing our public power system. So there's never been a story quite like this where anyone actually lived to tell about it.
Well, that was the next thing I was going to ask you, because your life was threatened and you weathered a recall election that was all related to your fight against privatizing the municipal utility. So how did you weather that? What kept you going through that, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, I came into politics with a kind of steely resolve that was a product of growing up on the streets of the inner city, parents having trouble finding a place to live, oldest of 7, family had trouble finding rent, lived in 21 different places by the time I was 17, including a couple cars. When Langston Hughes wrote Life for Me and Been No Crystal Stair, I can tell you, I understand that. I can understand what my parents went through. I understand what people in the inner city who don't know if they're going to have a roof over their head. If there's uncertainty as the everyday experience, social disorganization. So instead of breaking me down, all of that made me stronger. So that by the time I got into politics at age 20, finally took office when I was 23. I was already pretty tough. And when I was elected mayor of the city of Cleveland, I may have only been 31 years old. Some people said I looked like I was a teenager at that time, but I wasn't a kid in terms of life experience. And so because of that, I had this ability to just, take the rough and tumble of inner city politics. And also, I was able to withstand some of the pressures that others may have found at a break point. I will tell you that, when you grow up under the circumstances that myself and my brothers and sisters grew up, it either makes you stronger or it kills you. So, I was one of the ones that made stronger.
Which is great. And I think some of that might have been because you were started very young too. And we feel a little less vulnerable when we're young sometimes and taking on power structures. We have a similar situation in California where PG&E is our Northern California utility provider. And they, of course, were the problem why we had so many fires. They were the cause of that. Over many years, they charge those of us who are their customers more if we get the 100% renewable option, the evergreen option, than the others. And they are now making us pay for part of the lawsuits that were filed against them for being the cause of the fires in California. So our Governor Newsom did threaten to make it a public utility, but never followed through on it. Do you think we would have any chance to do something like that, to lobby for getting that company to be a public utility? You think that's a lost cause or a possibility?
Well, the right of utility franchise is vested in the people. These private corporations who form utilities do not have an a priori right to be able to just set up a utility. They have to have permission. They have to have permission from the state. They have to have permission from localities. And that permission is called a franchise. And that franchise in Cleveland at that time was granted for 99 years, where the First Energy was Cleveland Electric Limited Company was able to operate in an area of the city and was able to operate throughout the city, and they competed with our municipal electric system. But, you know, these franchises, when they don't serve the public interest, these utilities, when they don't serve the public interest, yes, the public has a right to take them over. Mm-hmm. And you have to pay for that. But you pay off the debt by issuing bonds, and you pay it off over 30 years like you buy a house, and you pay off those bonds through the revenue that people pay on, you know, for their electric bills. And generally, the electricity is going to be a lot cheaper. Mm-hmm. And my guess is, well, I'm not an authority on what happened in California, that it would be cheaper in the long run for everybody in California if they took over PG&E. Right. What happened in Paradise, California was unforgivable. They didn't want to spend money to properly maintain their system, and people paid with their lives. Not unlike what happened in Texas. Mm-hmm. Where the ERCOT group that had responsibility for maintaining the Texas electricity infrastructure was told 10 years ago they had to make repairs or they were vulnerable to blackouts during the winter. Didn't fix it, didn't want to invest the money. Yeah, I mean, and let me tell you something you'll find interesting anecdotally, and that is that Brock Weir, who was chairman of Cleveland Trust, which was the bank that, as you read the book, tried to use its financial power, weaponized credit to attempt to extort our electric system from me as mayor, telling me that they're not going to refinance the city's loans on debts that I hadn't even taken out. He came from PG&E. He ran PG&E and he came to Cleveland Trust. And the feeling is the reason why he did that was to kind of affect the same kind of domination and control that he did through PG&E on Hetchy in Northern California. So, you know, there is a tie here. Mm-hmm. And while this is a story about electricity, people who have read the book compare the story to the movie Chinatown, which of course was set in California. It's a battle over control of water rights. And so this story will equip citizens with the knowledge that they need to be able to challenge these utility monopolies, to learn the history of how someone gets a franchise, to see what citizens can do in order to stand up for their own rights as consumers, to see how the only way that you can ever have accountability from a utility is to own it. And I want to harken back to a quote that was in a book called My Story by Tom Johnson, who was mayor of Cleveland at the turn of the 20th century. Of Tom Johnson, Lincoln Steffens wrote in Shame of the Cities that Tom Johnson was the best mayor of the best governed city in America. And why? Because he believed in municipal ownership. Even though he was a millionaire industrialist at that time, he provided a municipal transportation system that competed with the private trolley system, and he helped set up a municipal electric system. Here's what he wrote over 219 years ago. He wrote, "I believe in the municipal ownership of all public service facilities, of waterworks, of parks, of electric systems. Because if you do not own them, they will in time own you. They will corrupt your politics, rule your institutions, and finally destroy your liberties."
That's what we've seen with PG&E, definitely.
So the division of light and power, Georgia, is actually a fight for a democratic tradition.
Yeah, very well put. That's exactly it. And I think that's a fight we need to take on in California. So I'm anxious to see in your book the ways we can start working on this seriously. Of course, some of the interesting news also coming from you these days, besides putting out this book, is that you're running for mayor of Cleveland again. It's almost like a full circle of you began there, you're coming back there. So what made you decide to run for mayor after you've run for president, been a congressman? What inspired this change?
I'm a Clevelander. The house that I'm living in is the same house I've lived in for about 50 years. I'm in the neighborhoods of the city. I'm in touch with the neighborhoods of the city. Cleveland's about half the size now that it was when I was mayor the first time. It's being overrun by crime. Poverty is at an exceptional rate. 20% of the people are living on $10,000 or less a year. A third of the people are living at or below the poverty line, and half of the children are living in a state of poverty. I can identify with these kids who are struggling and families that are trying to make ends meet. And I'm still a young guy. I still have a lot of energy and ready to get in the mix here and make a difference. And I care. And I think the things going on in American cities, people are looking for some new insight. I tried to bring that years ago, but I wouldn't sell an electric system. And given a choice between staying mayor and doing the right thing, I chose to do the right thing. But today, it's a different challenge, and I'm certainly prepared to do it. And if anybody wants any information about that, they can go to the website Kucinich.com and find out about what's happening in Cleveland and how it may relate to what's going on in cities across America.
That's what I was thinking too, that what you're going to be doing as mayor is going to be, in a way, teaching us about how to work on the local level effectively politically, which we're going to be watching Cleveland. Also, you mentioned the other day when we were speaking that when you become mayor of Cleveland, because I think there's no doubt that you will, is that you're planning to create a Department of Peace for the city. And what would that look like? I mean, could it oversee things like having a citizen oversight of the police department? We have that now, but what I envision is this. When many of us who are on this call work together, so that on July the 11th, 2001, we brought to Congress a proposal to create a cabinet level Department of Peace. This 2 months before 9/11. And the whole idea was that we can make peace an organizing principle in our society. On an international level, we solve conflicts without wars. On a domestic level, we get into the root causes of violence in a community and deal with the whole range of violent activity that is created, and do it in field tested ways. And it's a science. Not violence is a learned response, and so is not violence or nonviolence. And so I think we could, there's so much talent in this country that wants to participate in that kind of an endeavor. So I've said, when elected, it's going to be a cabinet level post, and we will take Cleveland in a direction that could be an example for other cities as well, as to how you deal with violence in a community. And also I've said that we're going to enhance programs in our schools. In Cleveland, the mayor is also in charge of the schools. So we're going to have a chance to have enhanced peace education in schools, to teach children peace giving, peace sharing, mutuality, looking at the other person as an aspect of oneself. We can make a quantum departure in governance at a municipal level and in education by taking these principles and catch that that ever-present wave of evolutionary potential that we all hold in our hearts, and quicken that impulse in a community. And so I'm certainly ready to do that. There is this thing about winning an election, and it's a highly competitive race. There's 8 people who are running. Nothing's guaranteed, but people in Cleveland know me. Yes, they do. And people all over the country know you, which is even better because they will support you. One of the things we have found in California, or at least I've come up against it a few times when I've tried to talk to educational supervisors about bringing conflict resolution skills into schools, where children could learn them at a very early age, so they get out of this reactive position and into an understanding of how conflict works and how you work them out. And
Right.
I've never been able to get it through to a school to do this. It's like the bureaucracies are so embedded in certain ways of working that trying to get through from the outside has been impossible, and other people have experienced the same. Do you have any advice for us?
Georgia, when we win this in Cleveland, God willing, we win it in Cleveland, the door's going to be open for every person who cares about finding a new path in governance and a new path in education. We staked our position on this. I say we because it is a national movement 20 years ago. And so we're ready to go forward and in Cleveland. And as mayor, I'm going to, I've made this an official part of my campaign. In my announcement, which is on the website at Kucinich.com, people will see that I proposed the Civic Peace Department, the local version of the Department of Peace in the city of Cleveland. And we'll do it. And we're going to make it work. And some of you who are listening will have some ideas that can help us make it work. Cities are laboratories of our democracy. And our ability to be able to change a country begins locally as much as it begins nationally. There is a reciprocal relationship between what happens at the local level and the national level. So yeah, it matters. It matters what happens in Cleveland, as it matters what happens in Petaluma, in Sonoma County, across in California, throughout the world. And any one of us has that ability to change the world. I always remember what Archimedes wrote. He said, if you give me a place to stand, I can move the world. And anytime any one of us has a place to stand, it has real impact. So Cleveland is a place where this is my home. I have served this community as a councilman, clerk of courts, mayor, Ohio state senator, United States congressman, twice a candidate for president. And so I'm coming back to
back home.
Right.
I still have my Kucinich for president buttons, by the way, from a long time ago. I wanted to just mention before I open this up to the audience for questions, is a place that I'd love to have you come and visit with us next year is the Mondragon Cooperatives in Spain. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. We never talked about it, but they created a Department of Peace in the Basque Parliament there. And through that department, the people who created that department were the ones who brought the ETA, the Basque separatists, terrorist organization, to peace. So there is no ETA anymore. They disbanded themselves. It happened all in less than 10 years. It was an extremely successful program through their Department of Peace. So we can talk about that another time, but I think it completely relates to what you're talking about. And they've done a remarkable job.
Elizabeth and I, a couple of years ago, visited with people in Spain who were involved in that. So it's so heartening to see the example that Spain is setting.
Mm-hmm.
So before we go to questions, I want to make a change in the connections here because I don't want to run out of power or light.
Right.
And so let's take a 30-second break and I'll be right back.
No problem. Let's make it a minute break. We're going to take a minute break.
Right. And then get ready with the questions.
Right. I'm going to pause the recording.